Okay. So last class we had finished how to save the data in the database through the .cs file in this case. Now you will be creating some master pages in the next upcoming classes. So all those master pages insert data, you have to we have already created one file called as insert code.cs. In that insert code.cs we'll be writing all the insert operations in this case. Now today's class we are concentrating on how to display the data. So when I want to retrieve the data from the database, how I should retrieve the data and how that should be displayed to the user in this case. So in that case we will be first having one more extra web page to be added in this. So let me add one more extra web page for displaying the data in this. So I will call it as frm display student details .aspx, and the page is added. Now whenever we want to display the data to the user, we have one new tag called as grid view. ASP : grid view use two properties, that is runAt ID followed by runAt server, and then ID is equal to, we start with grd followed by what data you want to display. So I'll give grd student details and close the tag. It is a separate closing tag in this, like your drop down list. Save this, Control KD. Now grd student details is the grid, is the name of the grid where the data will be stored. Now grid view is nothing but it is just like a set of tables in this. It's a table or Excel sheet in this. You can go to the design part. It will show how the grid view looks. So you can see here, this is how the grid looks in this case. Now you want to make it look attractive, we have an option, click on the arrow mark. Here you will get an option called auto format. Click on auto format. Here you can select how you want to make the appearance of that grid view in this case. So there are many different designs you can select. Let me go for this. Okay. So I want the data, the grid data to be displayed in the center. So when I have selected that particular option, every design code is automatically copied, pasted by the software in this case. The whole grid must be in the center. I want the grid view to be in the center of the web page in this. So the grid view tag is put inside the center. Very simple. I need not bother about all these things. So all these header style, footer style, it is added by the software itself. Software davane add ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. So we are not much worried about these things in this. Now the main thing is we need to write one stored procedure to retrieve the data. So let us go to the SQL server. Go to your open the database folder, college, that is a database. In the programmability we have one stored procedure that we have created in the yesterday's class. Okay, this is already for other batch, so let me delete it. Okay, now I need to create one stored procedure, so I'll go for new query, and when I'm writing the query, make sure that the database name selected should be college in this case. Now let us create one stored procedure, that is let me open the table column names also. Okay, now create procedure sp underscore you can say get underscore student details. That will be the name of the stored procedure which I want, and I want to retrieve all the student record. There is no condition for this, all the student record. So in the next line I will write as followed by select, mention all the column names that you want to retrieve in this. Don't ever put a star symbol, remember this. So I need student name, comma, next is mobile number, comma, never display the password to the user, email ID, comma, next is gender, separated by comma, course name, comma, address. Soft delete is not required. Created on. So created on is required because it will show when he has registered himself in this case. From the table name, that is TBL student, where one compulsory condition you should always give, that is soft delete equal to 0. This is compulsory. Click on this and then go select the query. Just check if everything is fine. Yes. Now execute the query. So query is executed. You can just refresh the stored procedures here. Just programmability, you can just give refresh. Go to the stored procedure. Now you can see a new stored procedure has been created, sp_get_ student details. So for in the front end, we have created one new tag, that is grid view. In the SQL server, we have created a stored procedure where I am retrieving all the data that should be displayed to the user, and condition is that soft delete must be 0. Now whenever you write a select query, make sure that compulsory you must write the soft delete equal to 0 in this case, so that you get only valid data from the table. Next, after this, now we write the coding part in this case. Now to write the coding part, in the .cs file or in our display FRM display student details, there is open that .cs file, and in the .cs file the procedure is you have to just call one function which will be used to store that which is used to retrieve the data from the table in this case. ಮಂಜುಳಾ ತಡ್ರಿ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ತೊಗೊಲಿಕತ್ತೀನಿ. ಈಗ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ತೊಗೋತ್ನಾಗ ನೀವು ಎರರ್ ತೋರಿಸಿದ್ರೆ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡಲಿ? ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಕಡೆ ಕಾನ್ಸಂಟ್ರೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿರಿ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ನಾನು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಅದು ಏನು ಇರೋದು ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. So here what I have to do is I have to retrieve the data and put it inside the grid view in this case. So retrieve ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ let me go to the app code, add one more CS file in this case. That is, all the retrieved data should be written using one more CS file. So I'll take class, and inside this I will write select code.cs. So it is all having all the select codes in this case. So illu procedure same ada. When you add a new CS file, first using system.data, next using system.data.sql client. So two header files must be added. Next, nimdu connection then object ada, same thing, SQL connection what you have given in the insert code. I will just copy paste that particular code which is written after the class. So let me have the same code, copy paste here, because connection will be always same procedure in this. Okay. Create one user defined function. So create one user defined function under public. So public. Now in case of return type, here we have to return something called as data set. Now what this data set is? Now when you are storing the data is stored inside the table. It will return either an integer value 0 or 1. But when you are retrieving the data from the database, it will not return one integer. It will return one object. ಆ ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಒಂದು ಟೇಬಲ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ಆ ಟೇಬಲಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಡೇಟಾ ಸೆಟ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಅಥವಾ ಇನ್ ಶಾರ್ಟ್, ಎ ಡೇಟಾ ಸೆಟ್ ಈಸ್ ನಥಿಂಗ್ ಬಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಎ ಕಾಪಿ ಆಫ್ ದ ಡೇಟಾಬೇಸ್. ನಿಮ್ದು ಡೇಟಾಬೇಸಿನ ಪೂರ್ತಿ ಕಾಪಿ ತೊಗೊಂಬರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಆ ಡೇಟಾಬೇಸ್ನಾಗಿಂದ ಒಂದು ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಟೇಬಲ್ ಕಾಪಿ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಟೇಬಲ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರೇ ತೊಗೊಂಬರ್ಬೋದು. ಆ ಟೇಬಲ್ ಏನಿರ್ತದೆ, ಲೈಕ್ TBL student I have here, the whole table can be copied inside this dataset. So dataset can be a copy of database, or it can be a copy of one table in the database in this. So now in Madeleine, since I am retrieving one the table ತಗೊಂಡು ಬರ್ಲಿಕತ್ತೀನಿ, that table will be copied inside this dataset. And I will give the name of the function. The function name is get student details. So I'll use a function called as get student details. No parameters passed in this case. And here we have to create a reference, that is dataset ds equal to new dataset. That is, I have to create an object for the dataset in this case. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾವಾಗ ಡೇಟಾ ತಗೊಂಡು ಬರ್ತಾನೆ ಅದು ಕಾಪಿ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ಲೊಕೇಶನ್ ರೆಡಿ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಆ ಲೊಕೇಶನ್ ರೆಡಿ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟಿಂಗ್ ds, that is dataset ds is equal to new dataset. Next, after this, ನಿನ್ನೆ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ನಾಗ when we retrieved the data, when we were executing the data, we made use of SQL command ಅಂತನೋ ಒಂದು ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. Of course, here also we can make use of SQL command class, but ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ easier method, there is a one more class called as SQL Data Adapter. Okay, ಈ SQL Data Adapter is just like your SQL command, but it is more sophisticated and more easy than SQL command in this case. So ಈ SQL Data Adapter ಗ ಒಂದು ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ, SDA is equal to new SDA, new SQL Data Adapter. ಈಗ SQL ಕಮಾಂಡ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ನಾಗ ನಾವೇನು ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ವಿ, ಸ್ಟೋರ್ಡ್ ಪ್ರೊಸೀಜರ್ ಮತ್ತು ಕನೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಪಾಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ವಿ. ಸೇಮ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ ವಿ ಡೂ ಹಿಯರ್ ಇನ್ ದಿಸ್ ಕೇಸ್. ಐ ಆಮ್ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟಿಂಗ್ ಅ SQL Data Adapter class object, and first parameter is the query that the stored procedure name in this. So that we have created here. I'll take the stored procedure name, copy this, paste here. That's it. Next ನೀವೇನು ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ ಈ stored procedure SQL Data Adapter ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ, he will go to this place, bring all the data, put it inside the SDA. ಸೊ SDA ಒಳಗೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಅವನು ಡೇಟಾ ತೊಗೊಂಡು ಬಂದಾನ. ಈಗ ಡೇಟಾ ತೊಗೊಂಡು ಬಂದಿದ್ದು the whole table, or select column names from table name where where soft delete equal to 0 ಅಂತ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿನಿ. The data is brought and it is copied inside SDA. Now what I have to do is I have to fill that, I have to take this data from here, put it inside the data set. ಹೆಂಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ? Very simple. There is one function in the SQL Data Adapter called as fill. Fill is a function which will take the data from SDA and put it inside the dataset. So very simple method. First we mention the stored procedure name inside the SQL Data Adapter class by creating its object, and then whatever the data is brought by the SDA, that data will be taken and it will be copied inside the data set, that is DS. Next, after this, very simple, return DS. So whatever is there inside the data set, now that data will be sent to the called function. Now who will call this function? This function will be called by the display student details page in this case. So I hope these three lines are understood. Very simple. One function create ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ, get student details. In that I have created one object for dataset. What is a dataset? Dataset is nothing but it is a copy of database or copy of a table. Now there is one more class called as SQL Data Adapter. Using this SQL Data Adapter class, I will create I'll create an object for SQL Data Adapter class, give him the stored procedure and connection. What SQL Data Adapter will do is he will go and bring all the data when you call the fill function. So fill function ಯಾವಾಗ ಕಾಲ್ ಆಗ್ತದೆ, actually fill function execute ಆದಾಗ he will go to the database, he will execute this stored procedure, bring whatever data is there, and that data will be given to DS in this. And then what I am doing is whoever calls this particular function, I will give that data set which is the data from that particular table in this. ಈಗ go to copy this function name which is inside the select code, go to your display student. Here in the page load itself, okay, what I have to do in the page load is I have to first create the object for that select code. So object create ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ I'll use select code. Say I'll put SC is equal to new select code. So I've created an object for the select code in this case. Next, now whatever the data set return ಮಾಡೋಣ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾ data set ಇಂದ ಒಂದು object create ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. So what I will do is I'll put using system.data. Inside this data we have the dataset class in this case. So dataset ds equal to sc dot get student details. Understand this particular line correctly. ಈಗ ಸಪೋಸ್ ಅವ ಇಂಟೀಜರ್ ಪಾಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಇಂಟೀಜರ್ ವೇರಿಯೇಬಲ್ ಡಿಕ್ಲೇರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಅವ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಫ್ಲೋಟಿಂಗ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ವೇರಿಯೇಬಲ್ ಪಾಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಅವ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಅ ಗೆಟ್ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ ಡೀಟೇಲ್. ಇಫ್ ಈಸ್ ಪಾಸಿಂಗ್ ಅ ಫ್ಲೋಟಿಂಗ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ, ಇಫ್ ಈಸ್ ರಿಟರ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಅ ಫ್ಲೋಟಿಂಗ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ, ವಿ ಡಿಕ್ಲೇರ್ ಅ ಫ್ಲೋಟ್ ವೇರಿಯೇಬಲ್. If he is returning a string, we create a string variable. The same way, this get student details, he is returning a data set value. So ನಾನು ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಡೇಟಾ ಸೆಟ್ ಇಂದ ಒಂದು ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋತೀನಿ and whatever he returns will be copied inside the ds. And after this, ds is having the data now. I need to put that inside the grid view. So how I will do it? Very simple. grd student details dot, there is one property called as data source equal to ds. So what this line says is I am telling that the data source for the grid student details. Data source means from where the data value has to be retrieved. I am telling him this particular grid view should bring the data or copy the data from dataset. Now from who has given data to him? It is given by the get student details in this. Next, one more attribute we have to set here, that is grid student details dot data bind. Data bind is a function which will link the grid view data with the dataset data in this. So al dataset na ಏನೇನು ಡೇಟಾ ಇತ್ತು ಆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಡೇಟಾನು ಗ್ರಿಡ್ ವ್ಯೂ ಒಳಗೆ ತೋರಿಸಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಈ ಡೇಟಾ ಬೈಂಡ್ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಸೊ he says as a function itself says binds the data source to the grid view control. Data source ಯಾವ್ದದ? ds. That is linked to the grid view in this case. If you miss this particular line, you will not be able to see any data in the grid view. So ಹಿಂಗಾಗಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಡೇಟಾ ಸೋರ್ಸ್ ds ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಆ ಡೇಟಾ ಬೈಂಡ್ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾನ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ it will link the data with the grid view in this case. Very simple method. Idistu you write it in page load because as the immediately page gets displayed, I want the data to be displayed on the screen. Okay, so for that reason I am writing all data inside the page load in this case. One more thing you have to observe here is select code naga I did not open and close the connection. I did not open and close the connection because ನೀವು ಯಾವಾಗ ಇದು ಡೇಟಾ ಅಡಾಪ್ಟರ್ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಿ at that time we need not open or close the connection because directly he will bring the data and he will close the connection. So ಹಿಂಗಾಗಿ manually open ಮತ್ತು close ಮಾಡೋದು ಬೇಕಾಗಲ್ಲ if you are using SQL Data Adapter class. If you are using SQL command, yes, 100% you have to open and close the connection in this case. So very simple method. ಒಂದು ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ, ಡೇಟಾ ಸೆಟ್ ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. I'll create an object of SQL Data Adapter, fill it inside ds, return ds. On the other side, in the web page, I have created an object for that class file. I will call that function and store whatever he returns inside the dataset object. Grid view naga there are two attributes called as data source, from where the data must be fetched, and data bind, which will link the database with the grid view in this case. Ishtu ಮಾಡಿ save the file and let me execute this particular file, that is view frm display student details. You can right click on this, click on view in browser. So click ಮಾಡಿದ ತಕ್ಷಣ the execution takes place and the data will be displayed on the web page, and you can see the data is displayed on the web page in this case. So very simple method. of retrieving the data and displaying the data to the user in this. So ಅದೇ ರೀತಿಯಾಗಿ ಮತ್ತೊಂದು ಸತಿ we can add one more record and that record will also be displayed to the user in this. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಆ್ಯಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ, it will get updated in this particular page and it will link the data with the database. Okay, so that's it, a very simple method of